Hello, comic book fans. Here's Earl Grey, or whatever funky stuff I'm drinking. It tastes like it looks funky, but I feel like it. And these are comics that I show you today and in the near future, comics by Herman. I will start today with this part. Just a quick mention of stuff to come. Comanche, a Euro-Western written by Greg and drawn by Herman. Post-apocalyptic tale Jeremiah. Herman has written by himself. Some one-shots. Jugurtha and his medieval age series, The Towers of Beaumaris in softcover, and some other one-shots or two-parters here. Stop from here to here. It's all Herman. You see, it's a lot Herman in my shelf, and for good reason. I love his art, and it grows on me with each reading. But now to Andy Morgan, as the German title is. The French original title is Bernhard Prinz. Don't know why they always retitle the stuff for the German editions. Andy Morgan, or Bernhard Prinz, was basically a classic adventure comic series with concluded episodes on each of them 45 pages, a bit like the 45 minutes you got in the TV series back then, like Riptide in the 80s, like Riptide or Cold Seavers or something like that, in front of a exotic setting in the Indian Sea or Caribbean or Pacific Sea. You have these straight forward told narratives with zero ambiguity. As much as I like some ambiguity in my comics, sometimes it's refreshing if you just get what you should get, if you just be told what is in the story and nothing more and nothing less, and you can absorb it pretty easily. And it's the whole premise is a bit of Tintin goes more realistic. These two characters, the boy Ali and Bernhard Prinz, embodying different sides of Tintin, maybe. In Tintin, you always have this. You don't know if Tintin is actually an old boy or old teenager or a young man, and here it's split up into persons. That's my interpretation. But of course you have the Herman version of Captain Haddock. This is Barney Jordan, an alcoholic, friendly but alcoholic man, and he swears just like Captain Haddock, and in one part of the story he does this exactly. He quotes Captain Haddock, and that was quite hilarious. 100,000 Höllenhunde. I don't know how to translate it into the English. And you can see it here, Herman in his, it's pretty early Herman, and therefore his cartooning style of persons isn't already too perfect. He has improved much since, and the coloring and all that has improved since. So you will see that he is really a master of realistic cartooning. But here it is, still pretty good. And Herman was a designer, an interior architect, something like that, and designer of interior design. And he always liked it, or said that he wants to draw his panels so three-dimensional that you believe you can sees all the stuff that it's in, that you can reach out into the panel and grab the stuff that's in it. And he improved pretty much in doing this thing, but you can see he succeeded a lot when he already back then in this these comics, when he drew the nature and landscapes and stuff like that. The titles here are done in a colored direct way. That simply means he drew and colored the stuff onto one sheet of paper, no separation whatsoever. And that's pretty typical for his later works. And so he did these covers afterwards. One of the best single albums of this series was, in my opinion, the Hot Oven of the Damned, where Bernard Prince, aka Andy Morgan, saves, spoiler, people that were endangered by a fire on an island. And he has a boat, he can saves them in the end, but how this all pans out and turns out is a very gripping, good, well told adventure tale. Even you know from the start that he will manage it, of course, because he's our hero. It's just a good, straightforward narrative, as I said, and our hero has here to go through the fire, and even though you know that he will succeed, the writer Greg and Herman do nearly everything to make us doubt that he will succeed, because the odds are clearly against him. And this little bear that he's carrying through the fire and adding this little bit of extra cuteness into the comic. But even though his sceneries and his landscapes and the nature that he's depicting here is absolutely spot on, the characterizations of the people lacks maybe a bit. It's sometimes a bit too cartoony and not so perfect as everything else is in these stories. I mean, Herman's persons that he drew are never really beautiful. They're more looking like common people, even his heroes. And that's actually a characteristic of his art that I do like. But you can see already in his titles that he drew later on that he did improved in the part of depicting people. And he doesn't shy away from topics like politics, corrupt regimes, injustice, violence, and he and the writer Greg are always exploring the border of what is actually possible for in a comic. that was aimed actually at teenagers or boys, to be precise, because girls or women don't really play a role in these stories. It's a man's world, but that's maybe a part of the trope, I think, of these adventure comics. So, yeah. And that's here the first comic in the series, and maybe just to underline my theme, that Herman had to learn how to draw people. You can see here is very cartoony, almost Franco-Belgian funny comic style that he used in the beginning, and it was a bit clumsy. So in contrast, I want to show you one of his later comics. It's in the beginning 90s. It's not as masterful as he got in the meantime, but what I find amazing about this comic, Vandisandi, is that he used obviously real models. Let's see in the back, which he thanks them for being models for the characters in his comic, and that really the comic benefits from that, because we got really distinct people and mid-aged to old people that really have a soul. The people in this comic aren't just hollow projections of heroic cliches, but real people. And this hero here, he flies to Africa to investigate about art objects, African art, lost art, and gets a bit lost himself in the shenanigans in an African republic that got independent some years ago and is now lost pretty much in corruption and all that stuff. And this is what I want to show you here, how the use of models really pans out our hero, in quotes, Carl Vandisandi, really drags his old oversized body through the story and through the panels. And the sense of reality, or the realism in Herman's comics, is one thing that I like a lot in his comics. If somebody is killed in these comics, he just stays dead. We don't have any violence porn like in some other stories, just to witness some issues after that miraculous resurrection. No, bullets that penetrate the human body in Herman's comics kill, as they do in the reality, and people stay dead. And yeah, I think that's for now enough. But I have a lot to show you about Herman's realistic comic tales and drawing styles in the future. So I think that's enough for today. Let me have a last sip of this, whatever this thing is. Whoever has designed this this tin can, he must have drank too much of his own poison. But anyhow, Thanks for listening and watching. Goodbye.